And those include discussions on a national free basic electricity for compensation for Eskom. Secondly, the 2023-24 annual plan for the regulatory and policy advocacy. 3, electricity generation compliance audit. 4, distribution compliance and enforcement audit plan. And then lastly, the progress report on the approved NPA between Eskom. Those are the items that are going to be discussed in public, and of course, thereafter we'll then close the meeting. All those members of the public that have so joined us. Thank you. With that, I'd like to then go straight to agenda item number 5, Mr. Mavuso.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, in terms of this submission, I just want to highlight that I think the members also need to know this. This area of our work is quite being asked to, ask whether we can do something to improve the rates that we give. But we always tell them that our mandate is actually limited here. It's only based on the model and the rate that we determine. 2024, we have come up to the rate that we have 2.76 cents per kilowatt. Yeah, which will be effective from the 1st of January. And
thank you. Good morning. Okay, the purpose of this submission is to request the Electricity Subcommittee to recommend to the Energy Regulator to approve the NFBE rate for compensation of Eskom by local authorities for the 2023-24 financial year. The NFBE rate is the rate at which Eskom is providing. Rate is adjusted annually using the methodology that was approved by the Energy Regulator. Just to give a background on what's the FBE. The FBE is provided to household that qualified for the FBE in the Eskom supplies area within municipal boundaries. So the terms and conditions under which the service is provided and paid for are set out in service link the FBE implementation, but can all determine the rate that Eskom charges the municipality for supplying the FBE on its behalf. Question table is attached on the submission with all the formulas and the calculation. 2023-24 financial year. The NFBE rate before the clawback payback mechanism was applied, it was 172.75. So it is recommended that the ELS recommend to the Energy Regulator to approve the NFBE rate 2023 financial year.
For now, thank you, ma'am. Members, we've got the submission before us. Any comments, questions for the team? Members. If not, I see questions now. Let's start by allow Ms. Masetti. Madam Masetti.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, my question relates to the vending costs, and my question basically is on the how do we make sure that is at least restrained, is curtailed, the cost can be controlled, especially the vending cost. So worried that it will keep going up and it will impact on the rate that we approve every year. So that's just what I wanted to find out, Chairperson, because rail its own capacitate itself without the use of the agents in carrying out this function, just to reduce the cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Masetti. Mr. Mkhize.
Thanks, Chairperson. Mine, Chairperson, is a small one under. I think in the document itself, that formula. I think that closing bracket, shouldn't it come after the is it plus or minus payback? Then you close the brackets there. So if they can just to look at that, I think on the submission, I think it's page. It's page 5, the clean page first time, to kind of touch on salient points that have been discussed in the past and how they obviously. For example, we've seen the FBE being there, but just touched upon in the submission itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Spear.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone on the call. Good morning, Chair. Thank you, presenters, for the presentation. Chair, also mine is a small one. You are actually looking at the formula that is given. I just wanted to confirm from the team if ever there was any outside check of those numbers, because we are taking the number out. This one thing, like Mr. Mkhize noticed that the bracket is not there. To confirm, is there any way of confirming these calculation and these numbers from someone who is not very close to this? Sometimes people use internal audits, sometimes use an external by the team, because whatever number we communicate will be the number, and we cannot come back and say, sorry, we miscalculated here. I just wanted to check that vetting, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. I'm not sure whether it was on purpose. But I think it was accidental.
Okay, I've noted Miss.
I'm just struggling with my computer. Thanks, Chairperson, and thanks to Ms. Sekhwadi. Chair, mine is just a comment that to consider in our advocacy processes, which is that the free basic electricity has been at 50 kilowatt that the policy was formulated. And I just wanted to check if is there a way that we can influence, or rather influence the increase thereof through the policy makers, that some municipalities, they do give more than 50 kilowatts. However, they also cannot recover whatever excess they give through a tariff maker to have the 50 kilowatt hours considered in terms of increasing it, because it's been there for more than 20 to 22 years, as I've said.
Thank you, Advocate. Now over to you, Mr. Wadi.
So this agreement is between ESCOM and the vendors. So we are not involved in the procurement between the two. Anything that we can do, but I'll find out. From.
Can I request that you be assisted? I see Mrs. Chotlo's hand is up.
Okay.
Yeah, and Congolene is right. We do not have direct, so we can actually start conversation with ESCOM as the role player in this. They are the ones that negotiate this, and then we can then start a discussion. Have actually raised this as an issue that whilst we are trying to keep the FBE rate at a low, what this uncontrollable vending fee, which is out of our hands. But I think with negotiations and talking to ESCOM on finding ways, and maybe also considering, I think it was I can't remember which member raised it first, but I think it's Ms. Masetti, that maybe we could consider to say, is it even possible that do some of the work itself? But I think the involvement might be too much for ESCOM to raise with them. I'll leave it there, Chairperson. But we do note the concern raised on this matter. Thank you, Chair.
All right, Mr. Chotlo, maybe you can add 2 items as we investigate this. Firstly, talk to Section 15.2 of the Act. And also remember, we also have the issues with risk, because the issue here is to what extent are these so-called additional costs, to what extent that can they be seen as being additional to the cost that, or to the tariffs that they pay, because we are approving this. It's a different story. Therefore, we may be approving and differ or end up departing. I want to add, but I actually saw before you do, Madam Masetti's hand shot up and then it went down again. I'm not sure if you are covered, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairperson. You have covered me, Chairperson, with regards to Section 15.2, because in this formula that we are using, we doing it under that section of the Act, and therefore any cost involved in the calculation will enable us to curb the.
Yes, Chair, I wanted to talk to the from an internal point of view, other than the research unit and legal, which from now on will look at all the numbers. It's a committee of 7 people we have just formed. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you. But I guess the issue there, you say perhaps that committee will then look at all the numbers, will then be able to just read this and see how it presents. And if there are brackets missing, for instance, they'll be able to see that. So that is basically the intention, is that audit function that says, I'm hoping that that committee will serve that function, says it's a committee that is detached from you, but can, for all the documents, actually see whether it reads in the same manner that you thought you were writing. Is that what I'm hearing, Mr. Mavuso?
Yes, Chair.
All right, thank you. All right, so that answers the question, Madam, by Madam Sbia. But I think, Pamela, if you can indicate whether the numbers are correct and answer the other questions, please. Thanks. I guess, Mr. Chotlo, you want to respond on that behalf or to assist?
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, I think maybe just on the last part, last point that you are making before I go to the ER, will then also then have that third eye looking at it before the final side doable. We can't do that. But I wanted to come to the point, Chairperson, if in existence for 20 years or so since the policy was written by the TMRE, which was then the TOE. Chairperson, or outside of our mandate, like policy issues as this one is, we then that is run by the TMRE. We do also participate, and then we'll continue to raise it out than 50, but we've taken as NERSA.
Maybe, Mr. Chotlo, you can expand on this and expand and indicate this 50 kilowatt hours per month funded anyway. Is it funded by a tariff or is it funded by a government grant?
By government fund. It is funded by Fiscus. So the Fiscus specifically for, and Kangulin can assist, it's not only specifically for NFBE, but allocated to municipalities, not to ESCOM, and that's why we have this submission. It is given municipalities. And in some instances, you find that municipalities within the municipal area, then ESCOM would be supplying other customers. Then that is then ESCOM would supply these customers out of their own and then recover from the municipality, because the municipality has been granted that money from the Fiscus.
Thank you. I actually just wanted to clarify that, members, that this is not something that is funded by tariff. It's something that's funded by a grant. One of those, I just couldn't find the name as I was thinking, but it's something I think the team can then, as a matter arising, could just find municipality, and therefore perhaps municipalities can always supplement that, but it's not funded by tariff. And that's the issue I just wanted to actually clarify. All right. Thank you. But team, if you can then maybe just look at the issue that have been raised by members further, the issue that have been raised further by members on the chat on this, but something, just a note and a small note for those consumers who might otherwise be left out, indicate how much that cost the Fiscus per annum. If you can maybe give us some indication of when it was first thought out at 50 kilowatts and at 50 kilowatt hours per month. When the tariff was say 18 cents per kilowatt hour, how that number would have numbers. Mr. Mavuso, is that clear?
Very clear.
All right, thank you. There is a question here about
yeah, I'll revise it.
All right, thank you, madam. Members, I think we've exhausted the matter, unless members still have something that they may want to raise. It says the electricity subcommittee is requested to recommend 1st of July with all of the improvements, members, that we have actually requested. So we recommend. Can I approve that recommendation? Thank you, madam. Who's taking us through item 6?
You will take us through this one, Chair. Thanks.
Morning. Should be worded as per the recommendation, which is stakeholder engagement, regulatory and policy 2023-2024 financial year. Apologies for that. So the purpose of the submission and emphasizing stakeholder engagement and advocacy as a key component to deliver value to our customers as well as stakeholders. So the plan is developed and is guided by the stakeholder and the organizational strategy that was approved by the admission, which include policy advocacy and stakeholder engagement on revised legislation. This includes proposals from our side, as well as legislation that's being amended by the policymaker. Is the kind of advocacy. You see a table there that then highlights all the topics that are in this financial year. The details can be found on page 24 from page 24 of 31st, whether they're internal or external. Also to highlight that the plan has proceeds to actuals versus 5. It is recommended that the electricity subcommittee approve the ELS, or rather the ELR stakeholder engagement, regulatory and policy advocacy plan for the 2023-2024 financial year. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Madam Makubane. There is a comment which has been responded to, and I'm assuming that we are all in agreement whether this matter falls under governance or is it something that's for public consumption.
Chairperson, Chair, I do note the plan and do support it in how it's been structured. But I think what's important for me is for us to really add in the plan a clear process of how we engage with our stakeholders once a decision has been made. And it may have been stated in this particular submission, maybe missing it, but what I wanted to highlight is that one of the things that the public out there or the stakeholders out there struggle with, it's the issue of us really simplifying our decisions to them once they have been made by the energy regulator. As an example, our approval of the Eskom revenue application, there is such a misunderstanding out there in terms of exactly what it means to the end user or end consumer. I thought that for us as a regulator, it's important to refine that part of our stakeholder engagement in a manner that would make ordinary citizens in our country to be able to understand it. So I didn't see the inclusion of a stakeholder engagement at that particular level, where we actually go out there and inform the public or our stakeholders in terms of our decision in a very simplified manner that they would really understand. So I thought we should try and see if we refine the plan to cover that. As I said, in my reading of it, I didn't see that it really covers that part of communication of the decisions that we make to the public. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you, Advocate. Mr. Mkiza.
Thanks, Chairperson. I note the response and I will talk as such. Though one may think it may also be kind of limiting in terms of engaging to looking at the specifics. But be as it may, I think when I look at the summary 6 and under 6, the summary of initiatives, that separation to stakeholder engagement or advocacy, I think some aspects of this actually would include the advocacy. Like if one look at retail tariff structuring, because the advocacy from my side, I also see it as emanating from our legal say, or legislative mandate for us to provide advice where possible, being more what one could consider as a first line of implementation when one moves from policy formulation to implementation. And therefore, like those issues in terms of retail tariff structuring, there would be engagements, and over and above that, there would then be advocates in terms of what needs to be done regarding our role. And my understanding is that there was advocacy strategy that was being looked at. It was a matter that was highlighted organization-wide. And I'm not getting that sense here. Like, for example, if it talks to communication implications or consultations, the consultations are shown here as only being limited to ER division instead of covering the rest of NERSA. So that is an issue that needs to be looked at. And then the other issue, which then, when we're talking of advocacy also in general, is that we also need to assist the general public in terms of understanding our role and mandate as NERSA, so that it is clear as to where we stand and what is really expected of us, and things that will then have to be dealt with by the policymaker that are totally outside of our purview. I think that is also important when we are communicating with the public and our stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Madam, can you, as you respond, I think if you don't mind, add two things. We need to have a clarity. What is it that the ELR team, in terms of the advocacy campaign, I guess, let me put it this way, what is it that you do that is different from CSM? That's number one. Can we have because it's something that I think was discussed in detail. Maybe if you can, again, just remind us as members the difference between what you do and what CSM does. And that, for me, talks very much to the issues around, and this is something that has been raised by members, that, for instance, to what extent do we if there's something on the newspapers, for instance, about NERSA, to what extent do we put our view across? And would that be something that falls within the advocacy campaign, or would it be something that is done by CSM? So if you can assist us with that as you respond to the questions by members. Thanks. Madam Makubane, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, members, for the questions. I guess I'll start with the question from Advocates as Tole. Yeah, so in terms of the communication of our decision, it is a matter of where that particular issue lies, but I do understand the point around the simplification of the decision. I was looking for this. There's a document called, just find it quickly, the communication protocol between the National Energy Regulator and external and internal stakeholders. So from a process perspective, I think that document highlights the process and the communication protocols. But in terms of the difference between the advocacy that we do as ELR and what CSM does, I think CSM is responsible for all communications in general, and all sort of formal communications. But around the advocacy issues is that we highlight matters that are pertinent within the industry. We highlight matters that are developing, so issues where change is involved, issues where there needs to be a communication of a different way of doing things, or a communication of a regulatory tool that has been developed, or to advocate around sort of a new approach, or to highlight risks as we are picking them up that are of a technical nature. So that is the scope of the stakeholder engagement and advocacy that ELR is doing. It's about change management, but it's mostly around both educating and also incorporating stakeholders in us developing regulatory tool, or in us sort of trying to explain a particular regulatory position that we've taken on a matter. And so it's not sort of the periodic communication that we do to sort of sensitize stakeholders around certain issues, whether it's inquiries that they make or whether it's something that comes out of the process of NESA making a decision. Hence this plan, which is meant to then post an environmental scan of the industry, is meant to highlight issues that become pertinent, that we would like to advocate around, and it's closely aligned to the activities that we are busy with, and it's closely aligned to the industry developments as we see them. So I think that is the distinction, but also to highlight that in terms of the development of the strategy of the stakeholder engagement and strategy, organizationally, CSM was a big part of that, because even as we are advocating, there's a lot of communication protocol issues that come up, and also best practices around stakeholder engagement in general. I don't know if that answers it sufficiently, Chair, before I move to the next one.
I see Mr. Mabuso wants to add.
Yes, Chair. I just wanted to say that also maybe it is useful to trace how, for example, we came to where we are. The advocacy part of it, Chair, came out of our strategy, where we identified the need to engage the policymakers, the different policymakers that are in our space, because we, at various times, we felt that we were not on the same page in various issues. So what is it that we are doing differently? It is to engage also the various stakeholders within the state, and that is different from any other person that is on stakeholder engagement at NESA. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Makwane. Continue, please.
Thanks, Chair. In terms of the second question around the labeling of whether a particular intervention is a stakeholder engagement or advocacy, it is a little bit, there is a fine line for sure, and I think it was that indication was just to show in terms of how a particular aspect would be pitched, but typically, especially when you're developing a new regulatory tool, which which the retail tariff issue, it needs us to change in the way that we've been setting municipal tariffs. So there will be an advocacy aspect for sure in terms of getting buy-in for the proposal that we'll be putting forward. So definitely, I take that point, Chair. And then in terms of the advocacy strategy not coming through in the way that we formatted our engagements, and I think there was a concern raised around us not going NESA wide enough. You'll also note that within each of the categories, we do have a capacity building component, which is meant to target a NESA wide audience. I will just double check whether maybe certain topics don't have that element, but we're definitely mindful of bringing in that element of capacity building and opening it up to NESA wide, and we'll definitely be working hand in hand with the current capacity building portfolio to implement that. Thank you.
Thank you. Have you therefore covered the issue of of general public understanding of NERSA's
Oh,
role?
yes. Sorry about that. No, that is definitely noted, Chair. I think definitely with every intervention that we do around that involves external stakeholders, it'll be part of the way that we pitch that particular scope to delve into our role and highlight our mandate. But should there be a need for us to speak in general around our role, I think that can be included. But we definitely always endeavor to sort of frame whatever discussion to clearly indicate where our role starts and ends with respect to that particular item. And so that point is well taken, Chair, and can be included. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, members, the point I just want to add here is that we should note that this program, as per the in terms of the work done by ELR, is not intended to take over the communication function, the CSM function. In fact, it is very specific. That simply says, for instance, in the process that is currently emerging with the issue that are contained in the Electricity Regulation Act Amendment Bill, there is clearly some kind of changes that are proposed in the bill, and that we may have, as NERSA, we may have a particular view, and we need to have an advocacy campaign. For instance, what is emerging is perhaps a wholesale market, and the question is there a platform that discusses this? And this is what this advocacy campaign is meant to do, because all we can do is implement the law. But we rely on that whilst the law is being implemented. The question is, to what extent do we engage and advise? To what extent do we advocate out there in terms of particular positions based on our own experience? So that's what advocacy is meant to do. It's not meant to replace the CSM. In fact, all of the issues raised around the explanation of our decisions are clearly things that are important, and they should be taken up. But all we're just asking is that let they not be conflated with this advocacy strategy. Thank you, Madam Makwana. I still see your mic is still on. You wanted to add something?
No, Chair. No, Chair. Sorry about that.
All right. No, thank you. All right. So, members, Mr. Mkiza, you want to have a follow-up?
Yeah, I just want to state that I do appreciate the responses, but the issue of integration and not working in silos remains important. Hence, when it comes to other bodies, should not just, for such a matter, not just remain within ELR. Those interfaces at least should be touched on, and I would support it with the understanding that it's a dynamic, supposed to be dynamic in nature, and I'm looking at the team in the reporting back to also talk to the issues that pertain to how they've adjusted, because we're in a very dynamic and robust environment that we can think of a plan panning out exactly the way we had drafted it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkiza. The issue of not working in silos, I think it's taken. It makes a lot of sense, and a lot of the work that we do actually in any case tends to dovetail with work that's been done by other divisions. So we need to be able to make sure that whatever that is being done by one division is not again repeated by another, because it then defeats the whole purpose of actually having one NERS. Point well taken. Members, can I then take you to a decision, please? The decision, and please, I don't know how this particular one ended up with the chairperson's signature at the end, but that was an error. If we can just disregard that. The decision that is sought is on page 8. It's on page 8, the overstamped page 8, paragraph 15.1. The recommendation is that ELS approves the ELR strategy, ELR stakeholder engagement, regulatory and policy advocacy plan for the year 23-24, with all of the enhancements that have been provided by members. By show of hands, members, if we can approve that. Thank you, Mr. Pokula, Madam Maseti, Mr. Mkize, Advocate Sithole. I don't see Madame Spear. But I do support Madame Spear. I hope you are fine with the discussion and the decision. Okay, can I then take us to with that? Can we then move on to agenda item number 7, Mr. Mavuso?
Sandile will present this one, Chair. Chair, one major issue I want to highlight for on this submission is that compared to the other years, now we have moved to having quarterly reports instead of just one annual report. Thank you. Sandile, please take over.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you and to the subcommittee members and to the colleagues. This submission, the purpose of this submission is to request the Electricity Subcommittee to approve the Electricity Generation Compliance Audit Plan for 2023-24 as per the Delegation Matrix Regulatory Method 3.1 and 3.2. So the plan here is to ensure that the Electricity Generation Plan compliance audit plan is according to the NESA APP, and the plan is to ensure that we pursue to reach the targets of the APP in compliance with the plan itself. And the plan also will enable the team to be able to monitor and track the progress of the targets of the plan itself. And this financial year, we are planning to do 20 generation compliance audits, and also the plan is to ensure that we present to the subcommittee quarterly reports that will ensure that we report on what the compliance we have done, and also to indicate the performance of the compliance audit plan. And the simplified or the summarized plan is tabled at table 1 to show what the plan entails, but the detailed plan itself is actually attached to the submission as Annexure A. So therefore, we recommend that the Electricity Subcommittee approves the Electricity Generation Compliance Audit Plan for 2023-2024 as attached in Annexure A. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Members, any comments, questions for the team? Clear as mud? It seems to be clear. So, members, with that, if I can then take you to the decision that is sought, that is on page 4. By show of hands, members, if we can approve that Generation Compliance Audit Plan for 2023-24. Thank you, Mr. Mkiza. Thank you, Madam Massetti. Thank you, Advocate Sithole. Thank you, Mr. Pokula. Thank you, Madam Spear. With that, Mr. Jacobs, you've got your decision. I also support. Can we then move on to item 8, which is the Compliance and Enforcement Audit Plan for distribution? Mr. Mavuso.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, this one will be presented by Lelo. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, members, and good morning, colleagues. The purpose of this submission is to request that the distribution, compliance, and enforcement plan for this current financial year 2023 is approved. I apologize, I see a typo where it says the decision is for noting and the decision is for approval. In the past, these were not for approval, these were for noting. I also want to state that, as Mr. Mavuso has said before, we have been doing this annually at the end of the 4th quarter, but the APP now requests that we do quarterly reports. So we hope that we will present our first quarterly report on the audits that we have already done this year. We do also want to say that we also have been requested to add the number of the compliance audits that we are doing in this particular year. The teams were doing 18 audits, and now we aim to do 24 audits this year. I know it's going to be a very big challenge, but I think we are up to it. And therefore, with all that said, we request that this plan, which is for the distribution compliance audits and enforcement plan, be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Members, any questions, comments on the plan? Advocate Sitton.
Chairperson, I do support the plan, even the previous one, but for me, I just want to, just as a matter of enhancements for the team, to say that where there are events that are unforeseeable that necessitates an audit, either at distribution level or generation level, the team must always bring the plan back as an amended plan to this committee such that we mitigate any negative audit findings, because what auditors normally do, they look at the plan, and if there's anything that was not in compliance with the plan as approved, it becomes a finding. So when there is an amendment that is unforeseeable at this stage, they need to bring it back to the committee such that it gets approved to mitigate any negative findings that may be picked up by internal or external audit. Chair, that was just my input, just to highlight to the team that that is really critical for them to do. If there are audits that were not foreseeable, that they end up doing, that are not in the plan, they must make sure that they bring those additional audits to the committee for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Advocate. Mr. Mkiza.
Thanks, Chairperson. I take it that they would still have capacity to do this audit as indicated. I'm not getting a lot of comfort with that. And two, related to that, does it mean that if there are the unplanned audits, they then also contribute to this? At the end of the day, the plan that is being audited, at the end, I mean, that the auditors will look at, it's not specific to the extent that it talks to areas, but it just lists the number of audits. I'm saying this because of the expectation that there will in any case be unplanned ones. And then I think whenever we're talking of these audits, maybe just one paragraph, a sentence or two, also just reflecting on regular information that does come through at the end of the day, because it shouldn't be like it's only through audits that information is or data is received from the licensed the licensees, which is an important factor for me. And then the audit has got that stronger element of verification, face to face where it's required, and ensuring that we've got hard evidence that has been verified and or witnesses. It's not necessarily hearsay. That is my understanding. Hence, then the importance of having one or two sentences, making a paragraph, just talking to other sources of information that does come through. Thank you. These are just my comments.
Thank you, Madam Mr. Mkiza and Advocate Tole. Over to you, Ms. Gobe, if you can respond. Some others, remember, just enhancements. You can just note those that are enhancements and then respond to the other questions.
Yes, thank you, Chair, for that. The CEO mentioned that we need to, if our plan changes, we need to bring the plan back for amendments, and we will definitely do that. And then Mr. Mkhize mentioned other sources of information. Yes, we will enhance that because we do face-to-face, as he has mentioned, because we go physically and do the audits. And we intend this year to do some, there's a municipality that we wanted to do enforcement on, but because of the poor responses, we have decided that we are going to start with the virtual meeting, so that we get them on board. But we have mentioned that these are done physically, and we do site inspections, and we also will add other sources of information that we use, such as the DFORMs. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before I recognize both Madam Maseti and Mr. Mkhize, there's another question. Do you have capacity to do the 24 instead of the 18?
That is not an easy one for us, but we are going to try, especially that we must do more, and we also have to do quarterly reports. This is our first quarter where we are testing how we are going to be able to do this. But we don't have any additional capacity at the moment. We are still the 3 distribution teams that at the end will consolidate our reports into one. But if there are any points where we are struggling, we will come back to this committee and declare such struggles. But we believe we can stretch ourselves, but time will tell. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Did not respond to the other one as well, but before you respond to the issue of these unplanned, whether the unplanned, whether the audits are specific or they're actually general, and therefore when you have an unplanned one, it becomes an additional, or is it part of that? You need to actually respond to that question as well. But before you do, can I recognize Madam Maseti?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I wanted to come in on the issue of bringing the plan back to the committee. I wanted to suggest that perhaps we can come up with a much more less administrative way of doing it, or bring it to the committee to have a look again on the amended plan. I think we can try to deal with that administrative bottleneck by perhaps create a space in the plan where there could be some ad hoc or targeted audits that may be necessitated perhaps by certain emergencies, or maybe there's a sort of the need for the sort of the follow-up on previously done audits, whatever the reason might be for doing the sort of the unplanned audits, maybe just to deal with the some urgent sort of maintenance issue that the licensee needs to attend to, and also in the interest of protecting the integrity of the infrastructure and the network. So if some of those emergencies arise as a result of that need, why can't we create space in this plan that it must accommodate that? And instead of bringing it to the committee for the committee to spend its time on it again, why can't we create it in the plan? Or then we can find a way of delegating that function to be looked into within that framework, within that criteria, to be done by the FTRM, so that those things can get attended to, and the FTRM will have looked into that instead of bringing it to the committee. That would be my suggestion in terms of how we can deal with some of the targeted or some of the audits that will arise as a result of an emergency or need that needs to be executed on an urgent basis. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Madam. Mr. Mkhize, follow-up?
Thanks, Chairperson. I think in the interest of time, I would say that maybe take it as my recommendation that if the audits are not specified that you're going to go to area so and so, then I'm good with it. It's fine, because then it means there won't be a question of saying you said you're going to do an audit there, but you did not do it. And then it becomes maybe some kind of an audit query, or you come short. If it's just the numbers, then I'm fine with that, because it means even unplanned audit would then be counted as such, rather than to say that these audits that you have planned that you are going to do, and then unplanned audits come in, and then you are not able to cover the areas that you have specified. So let's take it like that. If it is like that, then it not even just respond. Otherwise, they will have to clarify if it is the other way around. And then secondly, I think here the reporting is frequent enough for us not to require the submission of a change in the plan. Because when they bring the quarter one report, that quarter one report will then say what adjustment have been made to the plan. I take it to be in the same vein, like I think it was item 6, if I'm not mistaken, where I spoke of adjusting as one goes on, to say now these are the adjustments that we've done. These are planned audits, these are unplanned audits, and then this is how we've adjusted. The same thing applies also with regard to resources that are required, so they can raise their hands or raise those red flags earlier. I think in that way we are going to be covered. And again, I must state that my support of this, with all its challenges here and there, is based on the fact that I take them as being dynamic, and with the shorter reporting period as allowing us to do adjustment as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize, for those enhancements. I think, Ms. Corbett, they are very specific, perhaps addresses all of the issues that's been raised by other members. I'm not sure if you want to add anything.
Thank you, sir. I just want to say that when we were discussing this with Tamai, we were aware that it's better to present the numbers and not the names. And I think the points that Mr. Mkhize has raised are going to assist us going forward. So for now, we present this thing in numbers, but as we bring our quarterly reports, and we will then report if there are any adjustments. And thank you to Ms. Maseti for giving us those tips, that instead of bringing all those amendments all the time, we will rather create space, for all those that might come unexpectedly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, team. Members, with those enhancements, can I then maybe take you to the decision as a sort? And there's some overstamp page number 4, paragraph 14. The ELS is requested to approve the distribution compliance audit and enforcement plan for the financial year 23-24 that are to be conducted as per Appendix 1. Taking all of the comments that have been raised by members, that the plan is not site-specific, but is generic, it's the numbers, and will then take care of itself in terms of if there are any unplanned audits that need to be done, and so forth. And any changes will then be dealt with when they report quarterly. With those members, can I see by show of hands if we can approve that? Thank you, Advocate. Thank you, Madam Maseti, Mr. Mkhize, Madam Spear, and Mr. Bokula. Your plan is approved, Ms. Corbett. Thank you. And thank you. Item number 9, Mr. Mavuso, taking into account any other issues in there that may be confidential, please. Mr. Mavuso.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I will ask Buyi to present this one, but the main issue is the delay in terms of the approval from from ER, which was done in August 2022. And in terms of the decision of NASA was that the NPA had to be implemented with no later than 6 months, and unfortunately, this has passed. Bui, can you come and present the submission? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mavuso. Good morning, Chairperson, members, and colleagues. As Mr. Mavuso has indicated, the submission is to note the delay in the implementation of the approved 3-year negotiated pricing agreement between Eskom and ArcelorMittal Saldanha Works. ArcelorMittal Saldanha Works has been under care and maintenance since April 2020, so there has not been any production since then. And then they then approached NERSA for a 3-year NPA to assist in restarting its operations. And it's also important to note that when ArcelorMittal approached NERSA, they also approach various stakeholders, the likes of Transnet, Western Cape Government, and Saldanha Bay Municipality for also some assistance in terms of reinstating the operations. And then in August 2022, we approved the 3-year NPA between Eskom and ArcelorMittal. And one of the decisions of the regulator is that this NPA is to be implemented no later than 6 months following the month of NERSA's approval, meaning that it should have been implemented by the 1st of February 2023. However, this is not the case, as ArcelorMittal has not been able to restart its operation because they are still in talks with Transnet on a more reasonable tariff to allow the restart of the operations. And in terms of the implications of the delay in implementing this NPA and in terms of the tariffs, AMSA is currently on a standard mega flex tariff since they are still under care and maintenance. And once Eskom has some certainty on the restart of the operations from ArcelorMittal, then Eskom would have to reassess the revenues and costs of this NPA using more recent. And following that, a formal submission will then be submitted to NERSA for approval. Chairperson, we therefore request the ELS members to note that there is a delay in the implementation of the approved 3-year NPA between Eskom and ArcelorMittal Saldanha Works. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Ms. Mavinya. Members, any questions, comments? But the team seems clear enough. I guess it is. So with that, members, okay, Mr. Nkiza, hold your hand.
Yeah, Chairperson, I noted that challenge of being able to execute as planned by ArcelorMittal. But I wonder if the team knows, has got maybe the understanding as to what actually are the delays, and if there is any gleam of hope around when this agreement can be sorted out with Transnet. Noting also that you've got an MOU with Transnet as an authority. I'm saying this at the back of our of my visit to Dom Pedro last week in Kaweja, where we also highlighted these matters and talked to the issue of the implementation of the MOU, because there are projects that you find that have been approved from our side, but they are awaiting endorsement by or signing of agreement with TNPA, and therefore I'm just wanting to get from the team if in line with the MOU, what has been the progress in this regard? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkiza. Ms. Babinga? And you can be assisted if you so choose.
I think I need some assistance from the team because I'm not aware of any MOU with the Transnet. I see Brian's hand is up.
Mrs. Shotler?
Yeah, Chair, I was actually going to say similar to what Ms. Babinga is saying. Unfortunately, all that we know out of this NPA and the delay is the lack of agreement in terms of the tariff for logistics that will be charged by Transnet. However, from our side as a team, Chair, we unfortunately are not aware of the details of the MOU. We will then, maybe as a matter arising, go and check what the implications of that MOU are, and then come and report back to the members. But all that we are saying currently is we just need members to note that there is that delay, and it's based on just the tariff, lack of agreement on the tariff, and then we will touch on the MOU and what the implications are for that MOU, and get back to the members at the next meeting. But for now, we humbly request that this matter be noted, and be noted also on condition that we will bring back a fuller report on the delays and implications on MOU. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Shotler. Can I then add on this that says, remember, we've got the MOU we have is with NPA on the ports issues, but this is a rail issue. So in your conversation with either AMSA or with Transnet, you need to indicate that this is the issue here is actually rail tariffs, and we don't have a rail regulator at the stage, so that is the issue here. But in the main is that it's the concern. It's the tariff, I guess, in terms of transportation of raw material from wherever Seychelles or wherever down to Saldanha. But in your inquiries, please check on that, and let's be able to actually package these things properly to see if there's anything. Is there anything that's an issue in respect of the ports issue with the NPA? If not, is the problem with the rail side, and do we have an equivalent agreement on the rail side, or do we need to actually start something on that front? Because the issue is it's about logistics. But with that, members, the request is for us to note the delay, and the team will then further investigate if there's anything that can be done from our side. And we're basically investigating if the issues are relating to ports, to on the port side, we do have a relationship or have an MOU with NPA. But the question is, do we need to have an equivalent on the rail side? That the team will then investigate that. With that, members, can we approve the actual recommendation, which is on page 404, by show of hands, members? Thank you, Mr. Mkiza, Madam Spear, Advocate Sithole, and Maseti. I also note. Thank you. With that, can we then move on? Now this brings us to the end of the open meeting, and I would like to thank the members of the public that may have followed us on any of the platforms, NASA platforms. Now, we will now move to the governance side of our meeting.